please.
Interview with Nick Lewis, take one.
It needs to also be in that camera as well, so that camera can move to help. But if you go right in front of Nick's face, both cameras are aimed at his actual face. So if you back it up a little bit more, back and go towards it, a little closer, and then look at both cameras and just check with the thing not and say you're in shot. Yeah, brilliant. Okay.
Interview with Nick Lewis, take one.
And action.
Can you introduce yourself?
My name's Nick Lewis.
Can you tell us about Alnwick?
I grew up in Alnwick. I've lived here most of my life. And sorry, do that bit again. Turn my phone off and everything. Probably, yeah. Sorry, do that again.
Can you tell us about Alnwick?
Alnwick's the town I grew up in. I've lived here most of my life. I'm very fond of the place, and yeah, I'm really pleased to be here.
What would you? Sorry, just to expand on that. Could you just tell us, like, you know, is it a big town, small town, is it a market town?
All right.
Or geographically, just any information you have about Alnwick at all?
Alnwick's the town I grew up in. It's a small market town in Northumberland. It goes back many centuries. It's got a fabulous castle, lots of heritage, and it's quite a bustling little community. Most people know each other, at least they certainly used to, and it's the place I still call home.
What is the Alnwick Fair?
Alnwick Fair was an event I was involved with for many years. It was inaugurated, I think, in the late 1960s to try and bring tourists to the town out of season in the sort of back end of June. And it was based on the town's traditions of having medieval fairs going way back. But actually it was really just to try and get visitors in. My first fair was actually in 1982 when I was about a week old, and I was involved with pretty much every fair after that.
Can you explain some of the attractions?
The main one I can remember was what was called the Pied Powder Courts, which was where the Alnwick Fair militia and the judge of the town would try and convict, find and convict. It was always women, usually women, who'd been given a sort of fake crime. It was always a bit of a joke, and then they were ducked on a ducking stool. Again, harken back to a sort of traditional sort of medieval theme. It was always very entertaining. The ladies always signed up for it and were completely complicit in everything. And I was part of the Alnwick Fair militia for most of that time. But other things, I mean, there was always on the opening Sunday a procession or parade right through the town, which involves brass bands and horses and all sorts, and everybody joined in, and the streets were lined with people. And then in the marketplace right through the day, there was always events like juggling and fire eating and stuff like that, and obviously stalls as well, where people were selling their wares. And then there was lots of entertainment in the evenings as well, particularly something like the strongman competition, which always attracted a lot of people to the town and to the streets just outside this building we're in. And lots of other events in the evenings at pubs.
What positives do you think brought to Alnwick?
It certainly brought a lot of people to the town, a lot of tourists particularly. It also brought the town out as well. Because it was a costumed fair, I think people bought into it in the town, the residents, so everyone got dressed up. I can remember being at primary school and all of the kids in the school got dressed up in costume and would go down to the fair and perform on the stage doing little maypole dances and things. But even like shopkeepers and publicans around the town would get dressed up and they'd be in costume all day, working in their shops and things. Everyone would decorate their windows, and it was a real community sort of event, quite aside from the fact it brought in a lot of tourists as well.
Do you think it benefits the economy?
Indeed, yeah, at the time I think it really did, particularly the hospitality industry, like the pubs and restaurants and hotels and things that would have done very well out of the event. And also the stallholders who came from quite far away in some cases to come and sell their stuff. And people came back year after year as well. There's a lot of tourists who would come for the fair and come to the town in what certainly in the 1960s wasn't a particularly busy time of year in June, outside the summer holidays. That's probably changed a little bit now, possibly because of the fair, actually.
What were some of your best memories?
Where to start? Most of my best memories would come from the sort of last few years of the fair when I was involved in Alnwick Fair militia, and we were just having a great time. There was about 10 of us. We'd all take the week off work. There was probably quite a lot of alcohol involved, but we'd basically be out all day doing these powder courts 3 times a day. Dragging these poor girls up and strapping them onto the chair, that was great fun. I think those memories are the main one. But yeah, I've got memories going back further to events that didn't survive very long, and things like Dwyleflonken in the town square, which I'll not try and explain Dwyleflonken here, but it was a really funny game to watch. It involved lots of people in the market square. And those do seem a long time ago now. They seem the sort of things that we'd never be able to do now. But yeah, I think just the fact that the town was full of people and everyone was smiling, and the marketplace was full of stalls and full of music, and it was just a really nice vibe.
Can I ask a question? Why can't you explain Dwyleflonken? Because I once said the same thing. And why wouldn't it be allowed to be done now?
Well, I think probably from a time point of view, I will explain Dwyleflonken. So Dwyleflonken is a game where you have 2 teams of, I think it was 10, but I'll be corrected on that. And you're in a big wide open space like the market square, and you would have a batting team and a fielding team. And the fielding team would form a circle around a single batsman, if you like. But the batsman would be standing in the centre of the circle with a bucket of beer on the floor. And they'd have a long pole, like a broom handle. And in the bucket of beer would be floating a towel, like a bar towel. And that would be the Dwyle, okay? Don't ask me to explain the name. And that batsman would pick the Dwyle up with his stick and walk clockwise around the bucket. While he's doing that, the fielding team walk anti-clockwise around in a circle. And the object of the game is for the batsman to pick the towel up on the stick and throw it at one of the fielders and try and hit them. If he hits them, the fielder then has to drink a pint of ale while the batsman runs round the circle and hits or taps every fielder with the wet towel. If they miss, then the batsman has to drink a pint of ale while the fielders throw the towel around the circle. And that is Dwyleflonken. It sounds ridiculous in 2022. That's probably because it is. And as to why it would never happen anymore, I think a lot of it is really simple. It was to do with a change in alcohol licensing in the town about 20 years ago. But I think it was just so ridiculous that it was probably of its time. But I can remember going on tours with this down into the West Midlands and playing, or I should say my father, playing this game with a team of complete strangers in an unknown town. It was very odd, but it's a very memorable thing for me, and no doubt several other people in the town today. It would be hilarious to watch it again, and I don't know what other people would make of it today, because it was so funny. Will that do you?
Why is the fair no longer a thing, do you think?
Well, I think there's several reasons for that. The first one was when the fair came to an end, it was simply down to lack of volunteers able to commit the time to organise it. So in its heyday, there were maybe 30 people on the fair committee, maybe more, who would all be working all year really hard to make these things happen, to organise the events, to organise all the things that needed to be done. And gradually, as the fair came to an end, those numbers dwindled down to single figures. And there just simply wasn't the capacity amongst those people to get the fair organised as it used to be. And then ultimately, I think as well, like just broader societal changes. I think the town wasn't as receptive as it had been. The shopkeepers didn't dress up anymore, the schools didn't come down anymore, and they'll all have their own reasons for that happening. And I think the combination of all of those things just meant that there wasn't really the appetite for it anymore, which is a shame. But it had it had a good run. It lasted nearly 40 years, and you know, as I say, there was some wonderful memories from it, some wonderful connections made, and you know, particularly the connection between Alnwick and the town of Brina in Norway. You know, there's people from Alnwick living out there now who got married and went and had kids, and equally there's Norwegian people living in Alnwick today solely because of that relationship. So it had a wonderful positive effect on so many people, but it probably just ran its course.
I think your answer goes without saying, but do you miss it?
Yeah, I think I do. Although, as I say, it was probably of its time, and it featured in a time of my life when I was able to really enjoy it. You know, I've got a proper job now, and I've got children, and taking a week off in the middle of June to go out drinking with my friends, it's probably not the done thing. So it worked for me in that period, personally. As to whether I miss it, yes, probably I do, but I'm not sure I'd be that keen on doing it again.
Since COVID not being allowed to be together, why do you think festivals and community gatherings are so important?
Oh, they're incredibly important, you know, particularly for people who've enjoyed them in the past and taken so much out of them. The fair being a really good example of that. And you know, if hypothetically the fair had to be cancelled because of COVID, it would be wonderful to have it back after that break. And so many events that were postponed or cancelled during the pandemic were welcomed back. You know, almost even more so post-pandemic. And it all comes back to that community thing that people want to be brought together, I think, particularly when they're in a small town like this. See people they know, do things they're familiar with and they enjoy. The fair certainly did that, you know, every year. And so events like that are really important for small towns like this.
What other great community gatherings are there in Alnwick today?
Well, I'm involved with a fair few with some of the volunteering I do. So, you know, there's things like the food festival, the beer festival. There are plenty of events in the town, and there have been as well. You know, previously, since the fair finished, the Great North Music Festival, the Alnwick Music Festival, the International Music Festival, all happen. There's lots and lots going on, and actually not all of them are really that obvious. Sometimes got to scratch below the surface a little bit, and the town is quite vibrant in that sense. It's got a lot going for it, and there's lots of small volunteer groups who are running these things in their own time and giving people a wonderful time at the same moment.
Do you remember any particular costumes from the Alnwick Fair?
Well, yeah, I mean, particularly the ones I wore. The militia uniforms were usually, I think, sort of blue and gold braid, which is the kind of colour of the town, or the town's colours. But occasionally you get slightly different ones. I can remember when I was at school, a lot of my friends would be dressed up as like little street urchins with a little flat cap on and a white shirt and some baggy shorts and things like that. And then when I was little as well, there was a group of lads dressed up as pirates for some reason. And they were supposed to be the natural enemies of the militia. And I got kidnapped once by the pirates and held for ransom. All a big joke, of course, but that was really fun. So there was one guy dressed as a giant parrot as part of the pirates. And then there was people dressed in all sorts of things. A lot of them were very elaborate. You know, the ladies wore these enormous ball gowns. So walking through the streets of Alnwick with, you know, these huge rings around them and sort of banging into things and stuff. There was lots of that, and as I say, everybody kind of got involved with it, and everyone. So there was a huge diversity of costumes.
Pause 1 second, Gary.
Hello, hello.
Oh, actually, I was thinking it's one of you, Sarah. Sorry about that.
Can you ever see it coming back, and if it did, what do you think would change?
It probably will come back, I think, in time. But there'll probably need to be a length of time has elapsed until enough people like me, who probably think it shouldn't happen, have disappeared. But it does need that sort of weight of volunteer time for it to be successful. If it did come back, it would be very different to the format that it used to be, I think. You know, we live in a totally different society now, a totally different world with different restrictions and different expectations of events like this. I actually do hope it would come back one day. Whether I would be involved in the same vein, I don't know, but it would probably be a slightly different event. But the town needs things like that, and it would be really fun for it to happen, I think.
Is that the end of your questions, Bailey?
Yeah, it's good all.
Brilliant. I'll just one more actually. Is there any other events or kind of gatherings, music festival, etc., that Alnwick still has or doesn't have anymore that you think are significant, that are in your memories, the Shrove Tuesday football, etc., that sort of thing?
Yeah, of course. Alnwick's quite famous for the Shrove Tide football early in the year, down on the pastures. I've played it a few times myself, and there's not many towns left in the country that have that game. And indeed, we were involved for many years in the Alnwick Castle tournament down on the pastures as well, which again is an event that probably could never happen again in the same vein, where you have jousting and you have motorcycles jumping through fiery hoops and parachutists coming down from the sky and aerobatic displays and dogs displays and all sorts going on. These are events that lasted decades and were thoroughly enjoyed by the town. So yeah, Alnwick's always had lots of stuff like that going on, and I'm sure it will continue to do so, but they're just in a slightly different format and a different vein.
Can I jump in? What was you mentioned Norway, could you explain that?
Yeah, there was. I mean, other people will be able to talk with more authority about how it came about, but Alnwick and the town of Bryne in Norway, near Stavanger, had a very close relationship, which was mainly manifested itself in the form of the Bryne band, who would come over from Norway for the fair every year, and they would perform in the street. They were a brass marching band who would march up and down the streets and play their music, but they would always be around. They'd attend events, they'd get involved in the pubs and all the stuff that was going on in the marketplace. And as I said, they endeared themselves to the town because of that. So much so that, as I said, people ended up getting married and moving to Norway and vice versa. And it's quite a sort of long-lasting legacy of the fair.